I'm just kind of all over the place, but I'm starting to flow. Just threw some wings in the oven. It's getting a little late out here, but I stay up late. And yeah, all right, I'll stop rambling. Let's get the intro going and let's get into it. Yo, 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 welcome to Living for a Living with your boy Joey Bradley. It's going to be episode number 48.
Living for a living, baby. How you
I'm trying
doing?
now. I got a good little rhythm going with one solo, one guest, one solo, one guest. I kind of want to keep that up for as long as one, I want to do the solos, and one, I want to do the guests. I don't want to force this shit. But all the guests I've been doing lately and the ones I got coming up are going to be some good ones, I have a feeling. Probably never heard of the people, but that's going to be why they're going to be interesting. And this episode, I'm going to talk about, it's New Year, New Year's Eve. It's January 3rd right now, 2021. We made it through 2020. So many changes are going to happen. The worst year in history is over. I'm being sarcastic. It's the date doesn't matter. Like the one thing I have noticed, there has been no New Year's resolutions this year. At least like posted on social media and everything. Everyone's just like, yes, it's the new year. I don't need to be any different. It's just the new year's going to be different. I don't need to take any accountability. Just as long as the date changes, everything else is going to change, which isn't how it works. COVID's still some bullshit. But no, we'll get into some of that. We'll talk a little bit. I've been now in Finland for a month or so and talk about the dating life or lack thereof out here, and just kind of how you attract what you put out. Me, universe believer, hippie vibes, frequency believer, and it's funny how it's kind of came true. Really funny. And then a thing that I've been thinking the last week or so about, I've been thinking about it subconsciously a lot, is like the difference between scarcity mindset and like a mindset of abundance, and how I can use those to my advantage in order to get some more shit. And it's not necessarily like I want more possessions, but like more money equals more freedom. And I've just viewed money as a weird thing throughout my life. And so in a way, I feel like I haven't attracted it. Like I've only attracted enough because I've always said I just need enough. And so that's what I've gotten. And there's nothing wrong with that. But also now it's like, shit, well, if I can just attract enough, that means I could probably attract more than enough too. And more than enough would be all right. So we'll get into that. I got some good little examples, like kind of hinted talking to Dixon about crypto and how all these things have just came to be. So we're going to be all over the place. Went shopping today. Maybe I don't know. Yeah. Went shopping today. I got some wool socks on right now, and I got some leather gloves. They're over there. But I'm like officially, I raised my Madden rating of finish attribute like 3 or 4 points tonight with the wool gloves and the leather gloves. And then I also bought like a hot water kettle and a thing for the paper towels to go on, and a glass water jug, so the tap water looks a little bit more presentable and it just looks cooler. And then another glass jar to put my coffee in. And that's when you realize you're hitting adulthood, when those purchases get you stoked. Like I was stoked on all of those purchases. Also got a new Carhartt beanie too, which I had a dream last night about buying a Carhartt beanie because I lost my favorite one like 2 years ago, or no, last Christmas in Lisbon. A green one that had been around the world with me. I lost that one, and then I had my 2 other beanies that I left in Barcelona, and my ex, I think she kept those for herself. So I had to re-up on the whole Carhartt. I had a dream though last night, that I was buying a new one, and like I was spitting game to the girl that worked there, and I think I got like 10-15% off and her number in the dream, if I remember right. So it all wraps together with the Carhartt beanie. We're going to talk about the dating life and abundance. So, and the new year, new me. Yeah? No. I mean, kinda. I guess if I had to make a New Year's resolution, which has never been my thing, I've always just kind of like tried to have maybe like a slightly different thing that I think about mindset wise. 2020 was like just trying to be in the moment more the way I am as a Virgo, I was going to say. I'm pretty analytical, and I'm either like analyzing what happened in the past, or I'm thinking about the future and how we can change it or, plan for it. And so sometimes it makes me not super present. And so that's something I've really been working on this last year. And I think it was working. I think it is working. Yeah, I definitely got some tests with the lockdowns and having to really be in present moment and not knowing what's going to happen in the future. So, no, I think I would say I was successful for the most part, and ultimately it all paid off. So that's a good thing. So like I was saying, if I'm going to have a 2020 kind of mindset change or thought process to add to that, is just going to be the mindset of abundance. And so, yeah, I guess I planned on talking about it last, but fuck it. We don't need to plan. Let me just be in the moment. And so what I mean by mindset of abundance is the way I view it. There's two different ways. There's scarcity or abundance. I hopefully won't say abundance too many more times this podcast, but I had been operating from a mindset of scarcity for most of my life, I think. Whereas I constantly would think to myself, like, I don't need a lot of money. Like, I just need enough. Because part of me, the way I viewed money, just growing up and seeing family members and other people and just how I kind of saw celebrities or whatever, is I kind of had related like a certain amount of wealth to unhappiness. And so I think I played that thing out in my mind, was like, I don't want that. And for some people, I think it's true, but that doesn't have to be my story. And so, I've never been poor or, like growing up, I was always like, I'd say we were middle, upper class, like had to work for what I got, but also like always had what I needed for the most part. And so like, I don't really know how that relates actually, to be honest, but that's just important, I think, for the backstory of what I'm going to get into, because I think some people who come up from like nothing, like have this like desire to always to have something that they never had as growing up. Whereas for me, like I was always comfortable. I always had enough. And so like that was good enough. And that's the mindset I operated on. And I'm not like complaining at all about my situation now or whatever, but I've just realized that if I can take that mindset of having enough, which I've always had, I can apply it and attract more than enough. And money essentially equals freedom. And who knows, I think especially with the way the world is going right now and what the future is holding in its hands, like money is going to be used in a much different way than it has been in the past. Like I see material items slowly fading, and eventually we'll just start using money for either freedom or like convenience. Like for example, when I came here to Finland, I got a COVID test before I left in Prague, and that cost like 120 euros. But since I got that, and then I got a test here in Finland when I arrived, once the test in Finland came back negative, I didn't have to do any quarantining. Granted, I wouldn't have like had to do it, but it was voluntary. but you get what I'm saying. And so essentially I paid 120 euros to not have to quarantine for 10 days. So for like 10 euros a day, I didn't have to quarantine. And so like I can see with how we're moving, like maybe not in that exact scenario, but that's going to be much more common coming up. And so I would prefer, a big way I like to live my life is doing what I want, when I want, how I want. And so if I take that mindset, I'm going to need some bread, and I might need more than enough. Who knows? And so just been trying to, and I also been talking to my boy Colin about this, and like as I've mentioned before, like American football in Europe doesn't pay great. And so I've always been on budgets. And I started in Portugal, like my first contract was no salary. And so I knew how much money I brought and how long I was going to be there and how much money I'd have each month. And so I was budgeting and like lived on a budget. And it was honestly the best experience of my life, because that first year, I ended up kind of renegotiating once some things changed. But that first year is essentially the least I've ever lived off, and it's probably one of the most fun years of my life. And so like knowing that is possible is a great starting point. But then, as I'm saying, to keep that as like I was like, oh, I don't need anything to have fun. That's good. That's true. But I don't want to carry that over to forever. Like that's a good baseline to have. But in the same regard, like let's have more than enough to either help other people out, help myself out, whatever. So I'd been trying to switch up this thought process, because over the years, maybe I would neglect buying something in the day-to-day life that, I don't need it. I can survive without it. It's not like I don't have to have it. Like, for example, the water kettle that I bought today. Like, I can boil water on the stove in a pan to make my tea or my oatmeal or whatever. But a kettle, man, it fucking goes way faster. And so, no, I didn't need it. But, man, it made life easier. And for 16 euro, like, I'm really going to stress and, for 9 months, like, it just didn't add up. But that's coming from that scarcity mindset. And then as you stay with the scarcity thoughts constantly, then you're not attracting anything extra to you. And so today, like I said, I went out, and for me to I took 300 euro in my wallet today to the store, because I was like, I thought I was going to buy a coffee maker, which I did end up finding an espresso maker on Facebook Marketplace, and the guy's bringing it tomorrow for a fifth of the price of a new one. So, I'm still hustling. I'm still being smart, but I'm getting what I fucking want. So it's a combination of the two, and I'm not tripping on spending that money. But I went out with like, I might spend this today. And that's like rare for me. And so I get to the store, I buy my stuff, and I'm still like I can catch myself in these trains of thought. Like, I don't need the glass jar for the coffee grounds. I can use something else. Or I don't need the glass bottle, I was like, motherfucker, get this shit. You want it? It's literally like 5 euros or something, maximum, not even that. Like, fucking get it. I got the new leather gloves were like 20 or 30. I have gloves. I have little cloth ones that I got for like 3 or 4. The leather ones are kind of pimp, son, and they're way warmer, and they work better for the phone. So like, come on. Like wool socks, they weren't even much money. I can say they're a game changer, like to the max. And they're kind of swaggy too, and so anyway, I'm just giving you all these examples right here, because then I get to dinner, and I go out to dinner tonight to the pizza spot, which I'm slowly starting to get my spots here in Kuopio, which I really, really like. And I hope you guys are following, because I know I'm all over the place right now. But I get to the dinner spot, and I check Coinbase for the first time. And Coinbase, for those that don't know, is like where you can buy Bitcoin, Ethereum, and a couple other cryptocurrencies. And so I got super into crypto, not like when it first blew up in late 2017, and it like blew up right at the end of the year and then crashed. And so like at one point I think I'd bought in for maybe $1,500 or $2,000 or something around there, and I was up to like 10 grand, 12 grand in like 3 weeks. And then the motherfucker crashed, and that 1,500 or 2 grand was worth like 200 like 4 months later. And so I didn't sell, but I just kind of like put it out and like never checked on it because I was mad, you know? And so anyway, I haven't checked my Coinbase in a long time. I think the last time I checked it, I was at like $400 total for my portfolio. So I was like down, what, 1,500 to 400, down a lot, 33, 66%, whatever that is, 66, hanging out with the metal crew. Anyway, I'd been trying to check it over the 2 lockdowns because I was like, I'm going to sell some of this stuff just to get some money back. Scarcity mindset. But I couldn't because I needed to send a text verification code to my American number, which I didn't have because I didn't have any active phone number for like a year. All 2020 pretty much. I had no active phone number. I was just using Wi-Fi. I was in the 90s, baby. Actually, it's a really fun thing to do. I know a lot of people need it for work and stuff, but like it did make meeting up for dates a little bit difficult, but it was also kind of fun because, you know, I'm going to be there at 7 at this place, and if you don't show up by like 7:20, I'm out. Maybe that place has Wi-Fi. We can talk, but you get what I'm saying. So anyway, I finally got an active number here in Finland, and it took about a week in order for Coinbase to switch my number from the American number to the Finnish number, and had to provide different emails and stuff, blah, blah, blah. And so anyway, tonight was the first time I checked my Coinbase. And I'd been hearing Bitcoin was doing better and Ethereum, but I hadn't really been looking into it. And I check my Coinbase, and the number is about the exact same that I had bought in with back 2.5 years ago, late 2017. So 3 years ago. And I'm in the pizza joint, and I literally like like let out this crazy person laugh or noise, and kind of started laughing to myself because in the last 24 hours, Ethereum, which I have like 1.5 of, has gone up like 25%. And so if I would have checked it like yesterday, it would have been up, but it wouldn't have been up as much as it is now. And so I was like, it just, and you know, coincidence, whatever, coincidental, I can't speak, I'm so excited. Call it what you want to call it. Today's been like the first day of really actively thinking of abundance. And what do you know? Today's the first day I checked the Coinbase, and it's at like a good number. I know I'm basically breaking even. Actually, I think I'm a little under even. But when the last time I looked at it, it was like $400 or whatever. It's like I made money, you know? And so that's just been this thought. And so now I'm going to, I think, slowly get back into crypto and actually do research and actually be on my shit, just because I have some time out here and I do think it's part of the future. I don't know if it is the future. Maybe I'll start talking about it here. Who knows? Could be good for the pod. Little crypto segment or stock segment. And so, but it was just funny. As I said in the very beginning, me and the homie Dixon, he was like the guy who really got me into it. And so we had a lot of fun going back and looking at our old conversations about different cryptocurrencies and like, oh, we got to get into it and blah, blah, blah. This is going to blow up. And he was like, yeah, remember when we were in New York together and I was telling you about it and da, 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 da. And I was honestly like, dude, I don't remember New York at all. Like, you mean when we went in 2015 to the Seahawks game and the Rangers? He's like, no, we went one other time when I was at work. And I was like, really? And I like, my mind had just like combined the two. And I realized, like, right as I've been talking about more and more, like, if that wasn't some evidence of weed affecting your memory, because we were getting high most of those days that we were in New York, and I was pretty high most of those days not at New York because I was coaching at New Haven at the time. So I guess I wasn't smoking that much, but at night I'd go home and get after it. Last thing regarding the scarcity thing is I'd been saving any money I could the last year. I mean, Barcelona, I wasn't making enough to really save. Czech, I was making enough to save some, and here I'm able to make enough to save a little. And I keep saying, like, yo, I'm saving to travel in the off season. And that was the plan with Czech, and that was the plan from, I had saved quite a bit of, not quite a bit, but a decent chunk from working during the summer when I was back home delivering pizzas. And so I had this little chunk that I wouldn't spend because I was saving to travel, which is still what I want to do with it. But again, neglecting some like little day-to-day things that I wanted and I needed and would just make my life easy. And then COVID hits and traveling isn't even possible. And so all of these little things I've neglected out of the scarcity mindset, I don't even get to capitalize on because of the situation with traveling in the world right now. And who knows if it's ever going to change. I hope it'll change, but I have a feeling, I don't know. You know me, conspiracy guy. I don't even want to get into that stuff exactly right now, but I have a feeling traveling the world is going to be much different than it has, because ultimately traveling equates to connection, and also traveling equates to experiencing and seeing that different parts of the world are different yet also similar. And so like when you travel, you understand that like, hey, we're kind of all the same. And that idea makes like constant war and being enemies with other people a lot more difficult for people to accept. And this is also kind of like a little sidebar note memory I have from 1984, where like they say basically like no one's traveled from Eurasia to East Asia to, I forget what the countries, I'm drawing a blank right now, but if you've read it, you know what I'm talking about. And unfortunately, I have a feeling we're slightly heading that way, at least with the States, and it'll have to start there, but I don't want to get into the conspiracy shit right now, although maybe people are interested, but who knows. So yeah, man, that was basically it for the scarcity stuff. I'm just excited to kind of continue using this and see where it goes, whether it be with crypto, whether it be with football, whether it be, who knows? Some other avenue might open up. So yeah, kind of moving on. Like I said, this is New Year episode 2021, New Year, new me. Not a lot of resolutions being made. People just glad for the new year. The new date will do all the changing. I think I already said that. Who knows? But how'd I spend it? I had a fun little New Year's, although out here in Finland, at least where I was and the group I was with, it wasn't like made into some big deal like it is in the States. The States, we have the countdown and waiting for this, and you got to have your New Year's kiss. And I'm not a huge fan of New Year's Eve because to me it's like the winter version of 4th of July. And basically just way overhyped, way overpriced, and ends with fireworks that we've all seen before. And so I was like debating whether I really wanted to go out or what I wanted to do. But I hit up my homie Nico out here, who is kind of like the one friend I've just made in the wild, that, and what I mean by that, it has like no connection to football or anything like that. And ironically, or I don't know if it's ironic actually, like he's like a metal singer, and so his whole little like crew is into like metal music and playing, and the bar we go to is the metal bar called Autopoika, which I guess means kind of like orphan child or orphan, or auto means strange and poika means boy, but I guess like together they mean that. But anyway, it's not my scene, to say the least, or not normally my scene. I guess I don't know what my scene is though. If it's a good question, so maybe it is. But I've never been too big into the metal music. I liked Avenged Sevenfold a lot. Like I went through an emo phase in like 7th or 8th grade. Like painted my fingernails black. I think I would do Sharpie like Roman numerals on my knuckles. And I can remember at dinner one night, my dad was like, "Joe, you look like a fucking idiot. Wash that shit off." And that was the end of the emo phase. I had the black sweatshirt with the holes cut out, the thumb holes cut into it. And yes, but that was probably about as far as my little like metal or goth phase went. But it's slightly there, it's slightly there. And I realized though that throughout my life, I've always I get in where I fit in. And that necessarily doesn't mean that I fit in, if that makes any sense. Like if in JUCO, if you'd came over to my house, it was me and Biggie, who was my roommate, Asian dude from Hawaii, and it was everyone else in the house was black. And that was like, I was one of the homies. And kind of all through college football, just because of how teams are, predominantly black. Like all my best friends in college, for the most part, with, I guess, Bickle, I lived with Bickle. But for the most part, the dudes that I kicked it with, majority were black dudes. And so that was kind of like I definitely, by my looks, didn't look like I fit in, but those were my guys. And then like in Lisbon, I was part of the little Nepalese crew. You go to the Nepalese restaurant, it'd be 6 Nepalese dudes and me sitting there. I don't fit in by my looks, but I was fitting in. So yeah, with the metal crew, same kind of thing. I don't look like I fit in, but sitting at the table playing cards with everybody, or doing the punching bag game, which I'm the best at in the crew. And so anyway, I kind of was reflecting on this as I was walking around doing errands today. And I'm thinking, is it a bad thing? I kind of thought, I'm this chameleon that can fit in wherever, change my colors. But at the same time, I'm like, I don't want to change me. And I don't think I ever really have. But I came to this conclusion that when you're being you, truly being yourself, that resonates with anyone. And so you can fit in with whatever group. And so it was just a cool little realization, and I wanted to kind of pass that on. I'm not saying I got all the answers by any means. I'm saying I don't. I've said that before. Completely. But yeah, something to think about, definitely. I used to go to parties with random friends, but I wouldn't know anybody at the parties. And this one thing sticks out in my mind. Heather Morris, she definitely doesn't listen to this, but she'd always be like, Joey, it's not fair. I take you to these parties and you become better friends with my friends than I am. And I was like, yeah, sorry, Heather, I'm fucking dope. uh, and so it's kind of always been like this. And I guess I just never really like truly thought about it. I did. I understood it was happening, but I just never understood why, I guess. So that was like this is like the first time I've ever really like thought about it. So yeah, no, I mean, and the metal crew is interesting to me because there's kind of there's like a non-uniform uniform to it with like any kind of group, whether it be, any group you want to label. Like everyone kind of has the stereotypical look or whatever for the most part. Hipsters, gangsters, the metal crew, goths, nerds, like there's like a stereotypical kind of thing to it almost. Jocks. And like the metal goth combo with piercings and maybe some dyed hair and maybe some facial hair, longer hair. I fit in with the beard and the hair, but in terms of then black jeans, ripped, Doc Marten boots, some kind of like death metal band tee, that's kind of like the uniform. And what I'm mainly though say, or what I'm trying to say, is a lot of their appearances, this has been a realization, are kind of like hard or like firm, or I don't know exactly the right way to like word it, like standoffish in a way. And like, the whole metal, like God, like sad or mean, emotional. Yeah, I'm probably not saying exactly the right words, but hopefully you get what I'm trying to say. But what I realized being around this crew for a few times that I have, because they're some of the nicest people I've been around, friendliest, funniest, most laughing, is that part of this outward facade is just like a guard for like the true teddy bear that's inside. And I think this goes for a lot of different people, that we build ourselves up externally in order to protect ourselves internally. And I've maybe thought that before, but it's really come to mind with the crew that I've been hanging out with lately. Like for example, my buddy's got some face tattoos, and although other than that, doesn't, but like get up to leave, hugs everybody. I love this guy. I love that guy. Like might come off as this hard kind of guy, but then has love inside, and which maybe a lot of people, if you don't take the time to get to know people, wouldn't understand that. Same thing that, this one girl that I met, it was pretty hot. Piercings, half green hair, half black hair, got the whole goth thingy going on. I don't know how to explain it. When I walk in, I'd never met her. Say hey, was kind of like hi, like no smile, like, and within 10, 15 minutes, maybe a beer or two, that always helps, like asking me questions, laughing, joking, like was one of the most like bubbly people there. And when she left, hugged everybody goodbye. And it's just like, I kind of get it. But just to finish that thought, with the outward appearance guarding our inward appearance, a lot of things that happen when we're children ultimately affect us for the rest of our lives, especially, if we don't deal with them or we suppress them or whatever. And so again, this is just me assuming and just also thinking into my own self that part of that guard that someone wears, whether it be a medal, whether it be a hipster, whether it be whoever, people with tattoos all over, whatever it may be, it's some kind of protection or maybe some kind of identity, a feeling of belonging that they have developed because of something that happened, whether in childhood or just the past. I realized, I've moved around a lot, and I question why sometimes. And I've said before that I get bored of somewhere. I learn everything I need to know from a certain place, which I think is partly true. But I've also realized, like, I've never felt like I belonged anywhere, whether it be Issaquah or North Dakota or Connecticut or whatever, like anywhere, like growing up, and especially like when I was a kid. Like I just never felt like I belonged, even though I was like kind of part of the popular crowd, the athlete, quarterback, baseball, like technically I did belong, but mentally I just never felt like I was a part of what was happening. And so I've realized a part of the reason I constantly move around is like to find a home or to figure out where I belong, because I understand, like, at our core we're tribal beings, with tribal DNA that dates back to generations, and we just want to find our little tribe. And I've kind of realized, like, my tribe is universal, is worldly. And that was a big reason why I loved Lisbon so much. And I've told people this before, is Lisbon's like one of the first places that I just felt like I belonged. And I don't look like I should be there. I didn't speak the language in the beginning. You know, all of the external things would say I don't belong. And that's a cool thing about Finland, as I mentioned, I don't know what episode, is there's a somewhat feeling of connection here, and I don't know if it's because I'm also 25% Finnish, and so I have like ancestral roots and DNA that like does belong here, or is from here, I should say. And so, yeah, man, I wasn't even planning on talking about that, but that just got me off into a whole different little rift. And I know I'm probably not the only one. I, I know for sure I'm not the only one who feels like this. I know that's why we do some of the things we do and dress the way we dress and live where we live and etc. And so, the more I'm coming to this understanding, and as I'm verbalizing it right now, man, it's like you got to belong to yourself first and foremost. And I think I'm getting there, which is nice. Super nice. Yeah. But 2021, huh? I'm hopeful for 2020. I was hopeful for 2020. As I said, 2020 was a good year to me. For all of the lockdowns and everything, I still lived in the more countries in 2020 than I have my entire life. And things moved out and moved along pretty well for me personally. I know other people struggled and all those kind of things, but for me it was all right. So 2021, I'm hopeful, man. I'm kind of looking forward in a way for Biden to be president. One, because like it'll just stop the conversations of people, whether it be Europeans or people in the States too, that have no real clue of politics and will ask me as an American in Europe, the favorite question everyone they hear you're from the States, well, what do you think about Trump? And most of them have no fucking clue what's really going on. Just like in the US, most people have no clue what's really going on. And so I'm looking forward to not having to answer that question because, as I've said before, by no means am I a Trump supporter. I'm just not a Trump hater either. And so, like, when I answer them that, like, yeah, he's an idiot. You know, the best thing about Trump is he says what he thinks. The worst thing about Trump is he says what he thinks. But I don't believe what the media says completely about him. I think he has done some beneficial things. He's also fucked some stuff up completely, but it's just not black or white with me. And like, I know that when most people ask me that, given that I live primarily in Europe and maybe my appearance of kind of hippie, I probably look more liberal than conservative, although maybe I don't know. They're just not expecting that answer. And so when I say that, it like goes super quiet and I can't tell if it's like a judgment quiet of like, oh, this guy is a kind of Trump guy. Because as if it's turned into like, if you're not anti-Trump, you're pro-Trump. Because people just want to make everything black or white. And so anyway, I'm looking forward to Biden being president and people going back to just not giving a fuck and like not being emotional about the presidency. But also, I think actually this will get released after, so we'll see. I've just heard and seen some things on YouTube and Twitter that in a couple days, January 6th, there could be some weird surprises happening. So we'll see. Maybe it's not. If it does, though, watch out. Because people right now are at a breaking point, and I'm talking about in the US primarily. They're at a breaking point mentally. You know, I've seen the latest thing that's cool to show is like on social media, I'm saying, is like people either refusing to wear masks or people freaking out over people not wearing masks or, you know, doing something physically. I've seen a guy get water dumped in Costco, and a lot of these videos are probably fake, to be honest. Just the way the internet works now. But it's the one funny thing that I realized is the people who don't want to wear the masks are always called Karens online. The Karen that won't wear the mask. And this just fits perfectly with the narrative of everything that's going on. But really, by definition, I know there's not a definition of a Karen, but the first Karens were the ones who were like telling on people. You know, there was the Karen telling on the black family for barbecuing at a public park with, you know, there's the Karen who won't let someone in an apartment building, or a Karen getting mad at kids playing basketball in the streets and calling the cops on them. You know, like those were the Karens. And so really, like by definition, that being the definition, a Karen is somebody that is complaining about someone not wearing the mask. But as I said, it goes perfectly with the ever changing definitions and the goalposts constantly being moved in order to fit whatever the new narrative is. And so it's just funny to me, and I really don't care, that a Karen can now be used for someone who's not following the rules. When before, whenever it got invented 5 months ago, a year ago, it was for someone who was really trying to follow the rules and get people in trouble. And so now, I mean, I've seen some videos of people a girl quitting her job because someone won't wear a mask, and some lady in an elevator freaking out over a food worker who didn't have it over her nose or whatever. And I get it, man. Like, I totally understand people have lost their minds. And listen, I contemplated dyeing my hair or the tips or like doing a streak of black or something multiple times throughout lockdown. So I'm right there with you in terms of mental breakdown. But I just never reached the level of actually dyeing the hair. I hope someone laughed at that. I think that's kind of a funny little true joke. Um, but no, I get it. Like with everything that's going on, and again, I'm speaking mainly in the American culture way, but with the political and social atmospheres that we have combined with the brainwashing and divisive narrative that the media portrays, which it's hard to avoid, like, because it's on everywhere, whether it be social media, whether it be TV, whether it be newspaper, magazine. It's hard to avoid. The only way you can truly avoid it is you have to actively be thinking, I don't want to watch this stuff. And most people aren't doing that, I don't think. Or then, even if they are, like myself, I can still succumb to that sometimes, and I'll start reading some threads or reading some Facebook comments or reading some bullshit and getting mad about it and thinking, oh, these people, you know? And so I get it. All of these things combined with lockdown, which is just like so not good for mental health. I mean, it makes me really analyze dudes in solitary confinement and like how messed up. Granted, they got there for right or wrong a reason, but it just makes me think like how messed up they are after they leave, if they ever do leave, than when they went in. And maybe it's for the safety of other, that's not the topic, but these lockdowns, that's why I'm so grateful to be in Finland right now with no lockdown. And I just know how it was affecting me. And so I try and put myself in all these people's shoes, and I get it. And then, you throw in maybe you lose a family member or you lose a job and you're hurting, and then you're in the scarcity mindset, and from multiple different angles. This thing can be twisted and turned so many different ways that I get why people are struggling, you know? And that's like something I just wish we could talk about more, because whether it's self-inflicted, or I don't know if that's the right, but like non like mental health is important no matter how it comes about. In some people's cases, I think like it's not that they want to be like not crazy, but like it's not like they want to be uninformed or they want to be over emotional, but they also like don't want to take the steps and don't take some necessary steps in order to help themselves out. And so what I'm trying to say is like, no matter what, whether it's self-inflicted or self-induced or just non unconscious, maybe is the best word to say, it's important and it matters. And so I feel something for these people, because like I said, I've gone through it, and boy, I just don't know where we're headed in the US, especially from, what worries me the most is like kids who are, one, having to grow up with a parent that's in this state, but also then no school's online. They're missing those interactions with other kids, and just which kids are already slowly like missing because of electronics. And yeah, I would agree that communication is changing, but person to person interaction, I think, is still valuable. And then also without going to school, like even though I'm not a big believer in the American education system and what kids are being taught, just the idea of like having kind of a purpose and like a goal is important for kids. And so if you take that away from them for 2 years or a year, we're going on 2 years sooner than later. It scares me what long-term effects that'll have in the future. Because as I started and kind of said, a lot of things that happen to us in our childhood then carry over into adulthood if we don't address them, which sometimes are really difficult to address. So that's just something I'm thinking about. I like as I said, I think no matter what kind of happens, the U.S. is on the decline. And call me pessimistic if you want. I'd say it's just kind of realist, because maybe this is a harsh truth that nobody wants to hear, but do we really deserve to be thriving as a country with how politics, with how government, with how education, with how health, views, media, how everything's gone? If you look at all of those and add them all together, should we be thriving? I don't think so. And I just know, man, history repeats itself. You're not on top forever. The Roman Empire did fall at one point. And if you look at some of the little reasons why the Roman Empire did fall, some of them sound a little similar. A couple of them, which I wrote down. Well, I'll just name, these are 8 from history.com. And some apply, some don't really. But first was invasions by barbarian tribes. I don't know exactly how to relate that one into what's going on. Maybe you could say like some of the Antifa stuff, but I don't know enough to really make that connection. So ignore that. But then economic troubles and over-reliance on slave labor. And while by no means do we have slavery happening physically, but slavery's now become like a mental thing, with people being chained to the system, and as you move forward and forward, becoming more dependent on the system. And we'll see what happens with those stimulus checks, and we'll see, my buddy Alex brought up a good point. He sees in the future like there's just some universal payment, universal salary that people get that you don't really have to work, that you can just kind of survive off of. And that would be a downfall, in my opinion. The next one is then the rise of the Eastern Empire, and whether that be China or Russia, like they're kind of trying to make their way to the top dogs right now, you could say. The one that's very apparent, overexpansion and military overspending. I don't think I have to say more of that. Next one also, government corruption and political instability. Sounds pretty similar. Arrival of the Huns and migration of barbarian tribes, which I view like the migration. Actually, I don't know. I got to read up on that one. I don't fully know exactly what I'm saying there. And then the last one, which is very interesting comparatively to me, is the introduction of Christianity and loss of traditional values in the Roman Empire. And I'm not a big religious guy at all, but it kind of seems like now in the US we're losing some of the Christianity, but in turn that's also giving us a loss of some traditional values also. I mean, with all of the gender fluidity and pronoun bullshit and 2 + 2 = 5 stuff, it's just some weird, and I don't even know if those all fully relate to each other. Um, and just to clarify a thought, because I think if you watch this last episode, I don't fully expand on a couple thoughts where I say like, um, transgender like isn't a problem in third world countries. And listen, like I recognize that transgender is a real thing and it's happening and I do believe in it. I'm not saying it's like just made up and people don't are a dude with a dick wants to cut it off to be a girl. Like that's serious. I get he's serious. But what I mean when I say some of this stuff is the in the US, because I don't really know about some of these other countries, so I shouldn't talk about them. But in the US, we have this like obsession with it right now, where, in my opinion, kids are being led into that direction and almost forced into that direction. Whereas, and maybe they are, but like, let's let them decide, I guess. And so it's like our obsession in the States with the pronouns and the gender fluidity and all this stuff. Like that's where I get a little questioning. But yeah, those are some points of why the Roman Empire fell, and a couple of them relate to us, I think. And I guess I need to do some more research on it. But we'll see. I don't know if it'll happen in my lifetime, but we'll see. Last but not least topic that I've had the pleasure of thinking about a little bit lately, and it's been prompted by a few different things. But the old dating life, man, because, with COVID, I've had a few personal friends, family that have like gotten pregnant while in COVID, and I get it, there ain't shit else to do. And people are getting married left and right or engaged, and more engaged than married, but still even married. And it kind of just like gets me thinking, and you kind of analyze where you're at, and I'm like, man, I don't know if I see myself having kids, which like I think I'd like to have kids. I think I'd be a good dad, to be honest. But in order to have kids, like I'd need to get married, or I'd need to, find a girl that I'm going to spend a long time with. And that's where I have a little bit more difficulty in my mind of processing and seeing in the future, for multiple reasons. But I mean, like, first, like, the other person has to like me a lot, which I guess could be possible. Still not easy. Um, and then, in kind of in that little same category, like they need, because in order to like me a lot, like you would also kind of have to be on my same vibe and not be brainwashed and not be a robot and, you know, like have this slightly different look of life maybe than the status quo. And so like those two things combined are a little bit rare, and like it's been nice, like almost all of my little relationships, and or not little but relationships in the past, like I've they normally end because I move. And so I end up staying like decent friends with people, with exes, or if you want to call them that. And like there's a couple that I could always like see, maybe it could work out later on down the road. And boy, this week or this last month, the universe has just hooked me up and like shown that we've like outgrown each other with whatever the topic may be. One of them was kind of regarding the vaccine for old Corvid, And I think you can probably understand what my position is on that. And then one of them was in terms of just like, really just like thinking, but um, like thinking versus knowing. But it all stemmed over like a video that was sent to me regarding like psychedelic drugs. And the person who sent it to me like didn't even watch the video, and the video itself like was a guy talking about the title says psychedelic drug, didn't even talk about him. And so I was like, did you watch the video? Because the point that you're kind of trying to make wasn't made at all in the video. I was like, oh, I didn't even watch it. I was like, oh. And so anyway, that, like I said, it was just like, that was like a perfect little like poke in the ass by the universe, like, yo, stop it, bro. Stop it, bro. Which was nice, you know? But moving on in terms of finding, like, third, which may be the hardest of the three I've said so far, is like, with my lifestyle of moving consistently, although I'd like to get a little bit more stationary, but then still I want to travel like 3-4 months out of the year. And so being able to do that or follow or do or then just be cool with me out doing my own thing for a couple months, that's tough. And then fourth and finally, like, they got to look good. And they got to, like, we got to match each other on the sexual level. So, I mean, that's probably the easiest to find, honestly, of the four. But yeah, so I just don't know if it's in the cards for your boy, and I I've thought about this a little bit lately because every time a homie gets married or whatever, it pops in like, is that shit gonna happen to you, bro? Because you ain't even close to that, my G. And like, I view, I like the idea of like one soulmate that you're supposed to be with forever kind of thing. But I don't know if I believe in that, to keep it real. I more so believe that we all have multiple soulmates, and some we're not supposed to be with romantically. Like, I think it's possible that you have a soulmate that's of the same sex that just is a really good friend. Ultimately it's someone that like teaches you something in one way or another and comes into your life in just the right time. And I know I hear that could also be like a karmic relationship, but I don't need all of these weird little descriptors and labels. Just puts things in boxes that I don't think these things are able to be labeled. Able to be labeled. Ooh, that's kind of a dope little line. So I think also people change. And so the idea of like being with someone forever is just unrealistic, you know? And I'm also sometimes wondering about the idea of like monogamy and if we're supposed to be monogamous and like if that's truly human nature or if that's just been kind of programmed into us. I don't know. I'd like to do some more reading and research and stuff on that. If you have any information on that, send it my way, please. So yeah, I when I kind of put all those things out there, I just I guess I wouldn't say I'm super hopeful that it'll happen. Yet at the same time I'm not saying it wouldn't ever happen either. You know what I mean? So yeah, and then dating out here in Finland's been kind of interesting, and like I said, the vibes and frequencies you put out, like my mindset of abundance, is a real thing, man. And so earlier this year, while I was in Barcelona, I was in probably like the most serious relationship of my life. And then when I moved to Czech Republic, it ultimately ended up ending. And it was great. I look at it very positively. I think it wasn't perfect, but I don't think anything ever will be. There were things that we both needed time apart to work on, I believe. And, ultimately it was the timing was right, and it was a great learning lesson. But anyway, the reason I'm saying that is after that I've kind of been like, well, I don't want a relationship like that. Just because, not because it was bad, but it was just one of the things I learned was I'm not ready to be in that serious of a relationship yet. There's I don't I still have things that I need to do personally where I don't feel I'm able to commit the amount of energy needed in order to be in a serious relationship. And so, as you guys know from Czech Republic, I was swimming pretty solo out there, and that was all right. That was fine. There were still a couple little nice connections out there. And then I moved out here, and I'm like, I kind of moved out here, and I was just like, I'm just to be straight up, I'm looking to fuck, which has never really been my style. I say, and I still say, like, I need some kind of connection mentally in order for me to want to fuck, and honestly, for me to be good. If there's no connection, I'm terrible. If there is, I'm all right, I'm glad I'm putting this in at the end of the podcast. Oh, sorry, Mom. Um, but yeah, so when I got here, I'm on Tinder. I meet people in person at times also. But I view Tinder's probably a waste of time, like 95% of the time. But also I think that if you're going to attract something, you can attract it wherever. And so it's kind of like opening you up to more channels. But as I said, like my mindset out here, I was like, yeah, I'm just trying to fuck. And so that's kind of what came in that's what channel I was on. And ultimately it like wasn't very fulfilling. And I mean, it wasn't a lot, don't get me wrong. But I'm a quick learner. I'm like, okay, that wasn't great. I don't need to keep doing that. And so I switched. I'm like, okay, like I'd like a connection, but I don't want a relationship, And so match with this one chick, and her little bio says like tea at your place. And so I'm kind of thinking like, okay, like that seems pretty wholesome. You feel me? And like, okay, yeah, you want to come over for tea? It's like middle of the day. And we only exchanged like a few back and like 3 or 4 messages, almost just to set up the little tea date. So I'm like, okay, like this chick, like she's with just meeting to get to know in person rather than doing the bullshit message pen pal thing on Tinder or on whatever dating app, only for it to not amount to anything and just be an utter waste of time. And so she gets here, we have our tea. There's a good connection, talking. We're talking about family stuff. We're talking about LSD. We're talking about all kinds of stuff. Huh. I hope that audio was all right. I had some weird shit happening. But I'm like, okay, like And I gotta say, I went into this thing like I'm not even gonna try and kiss this girl, like because I'm getting back on wholesome Joey connection mode, connection vibe. And so it's going. I'm thinking it's only just gonna be a cup of tea or two, and then we'll part ways. But it's going well. I'm getting hungry, so I'm gonna make food. And I say, hey, I'm gonna make some food if you want some. A little impressive, you know. So end up making some tacos, and then we get done with that, and like it's still going, still flowing. I'm like, well, let's go for a walk. And that's not really my style at all. But again, I'm trying to be wholesome Joey. You feel me? And go for a nice walk, dope ass walk. Like right now here, it's like super snowy. The snow is like stuck to all the branches, so everything's just white. It reminds me of back home up in the mountains at like the ski resort, which I grew up kind of going to. We had a condo up there. So it was nice. It was cool. And we're talking, I mean, we're flowing, talking about, I mean, she can hang in all kinds of categories. And so I'm like, yo, this is dope. But I'm still like, you know, I'm attracted, but I'm like, I'm that's not what I'm doing. That's not what I'm here for. So we get back to my place for tea round two and like straight up with each other. And I forget how she brought it up, but she was like, I gotta admit, I kind of came over here and I'd explained to her that like what I just said, that like the first month or so of being out here, first few weeks, like I was just trying to fuck. And then with her, I was like, nah, I just want to talk or at least like develop something. And she's like, I gotta admit, when I first came over here, like my mindset was more of your first mindset. But then once we got to talking and stuff, like I realized like, oh damn, there is kind of actually a connection here. And so I'm like, yo, so you really just came over here to fuck me? Which like kind of boosted my ego in one way and also like hurt me in another way. Because it's like one of the few times in my life probably where like the roles have been that way, but in the way that they were. I've probably normally been on the other side of the role. You know, I don't know. I'd have to really think, but it was different. And so I'm laughing, and yeah, it's just like I said, it was just funny. You get what you put out. Sometimes you put out what you get. But like there was speaking of like the universe, and this was when was this? I don't know. I had one Tinder Tinder date get canceled, a coffee date, which I should have known from the jump that this chick was a bullshitter because she led with like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm just a really bad texter." And like let's be honest and call it for what it is now in 2020. If anyone ever uses that line with you, they are full of shit. Like we all know that, right? Like I'm not the best texter. I mean, I don't have as much to like when I'm busy, yeah, it's going to take me a while to get you back, but like if I'm interested, I'm going to text you back. Like I'm not going to wait 4 days. You know, like that especially in pandemic times when we're on, you know. And so I called her out. I was like, that's just like a bullshit excuse. She's like, no, I've just been doing a lot of, I mean, I was like, well, what have you been up to? Oh, there's just been a lot of housework. And it's like, okay, this chick is full of shit. And so anyway, it got proven to the maximum of the day of the coffee date. She's like, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to ask. Have you gone to any bars or any social gatherings in the last few weeks? It's like, yeah, bitch, they're allowed here. You know, and I just said, yeah. And she said, oh, well, then in that case, I'm going to have to cancel. I'm sorry, I should have asked earlier. I was just like, LOL, okay. Like, that was just the universe helping your boy out, not wasting my time. Because I don't really think, like, she's dumb to the sense of, like, believing in the COVID hype, because there's literally been, like, 300 cases in Kuopio in the entire year. As much as she's just a bullshitter looking for a reason to get out of it. And so I think that's how I'm gonna end it. Hope y'all enjoyed this one. This one was about as raw as I've been, I think. Maybe too raw. Yeah, I gotta end it before I start sharing too much. Alrighty, y'all, man. Until next time, peace and much love. Holla.
Living for a living, baby. How you doing?